What is going on, people? TripleM back again with another video. It's daily dose of football content, and today I've got a very short and sweet video for you guys discussing Arsenal as they are currently sat top of the Premier League mountain after 7 games played. And with 2 weeks of the international break coming up, it's not going to change whether we like it or not as rivals. So I thought it would be a fitting time and a perfect time to discuss whether or not Arsenal are genuine title contenders, because we know that there's been a massive drop-off with Liverpool for one reason or another, and Chelsea seem to be out of the picture with their new managerial appointment. So reason says that it's either Spurs or Arsenal who are going to push Manchester City to the title. Now, I personally think that Manchester City are going to win the title anyways, but who will push them? Who will be in the title race? I think Arsenal are a good shout, and we're going to talk about why in this video. We're going to look at some individual performances. We're going to talk a little bit about Mikel Arteta, but first, just talking generally about Arsenal, I think they've been magnificent this season, genuinely speaking. Like, as a Manchester United fan, from a neutral point of view, I think Arsenal have been the most entertaining team to watch. They've scored 17 goals, they've conceded 7, and 3 of those 7 came against Manchester United. So, on average, they're actually not conceding that many goals. If it wasn't for that game at Old Trafford, they would have one of the best goal differences in the league. And even with that game at Old Trafford, right, because I know if buts and maybes don't count, and we don't like to talk about hypotheticals as football fans. So even with that context applied, they are still the 3rd best team in terms of goal difference at the moment. Like, I think only Spurs and Man City are ahead of them. Someone can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure Spurs and Man City are the only 2 teams with a better goal difference than Arsenal at the moment. So even with that Manchester United game, which put a bit of a blemish on their start to the Premier League so far, it's still been a very good season for them. And just aesthetically, they're one of the most entertaining teams to watch this season, genuinely speaking. They have the most palatable style of play. Now, you could say Manchester City have been amazing to watch this season as well, and I can't deny that. They've been pretty good. Erling Haaland has been doing his thing. You know, they got big boy Haaland up front, so obviously they're going to be one of the most sought-after teams to watch in the Premier League. But the thing about Manchester City is I expect them to be that good. I didn't expect Arsenal to be that good. And that's the difference, right? I didn't expect Arsenal to be as good as they've been right now. And so that's the context here. You know, everything is about context. So let's start and talk about individual performances, because Granit Xhaka, this man on my right, okay, he has come under a lot of criticism, both from rivals and Arsenal fans. He's almost become the laughingstock of Arsenal Football Club. But this season, he has been the best version of him that I've seen in a very long time. Usually he struggles with discipline, and I'm not just talking about yellow cards and red cards and putting in shady tackles, but I'm talking about discipline on the ball. I'm talking about decision making. I'm talking about putting his team in compromising situations time and time again, week in, week out. So this season, it's been a lot better from Granit Xhaka. He's got 4 goal contributions so far this season. He's averaging 2 key passes per game, and he's averaging 2 big chances created per game, which is pretty impressive considering he isn't even the number 10 for Arsenal. He isn't even their most advanced player in the field, and he's contributing so much to the team. His pass accuracy generally across the board is sitting at 85% on average, and his own half is sitting at 91%, which is pretty good. It should be in the 90s. You know, you shouldn't be losing the ball that often in your own half, especially if you're playing at this level. So, and the thing is with Xhaka, and why I've been so impressed with him, is because a lot of people said when Thomas Partey is injured or when Thomas Partey is out of the midfield, you're going to see a massive drop-off in Arsenal's performances. And this season, so far, that hasn't been the case. Maybe sometime in the future, that's going to be the case. But for now, it hasn't been the case because Xhaka and Lukonga, Sambi, right, they've held their own. They've genuinely held their own. Even at Old Trafford, they held their own for most of that game. I think it was in the second half where Arsenal really capitulated and really showed some of their old selves, really, in many ways. But for most of that game, they were resolute, they were difficult to break down. And you know what? I said this on my match reaction, and I still believe it a few weeks later. I think Arsenal were marginally the better team for most of that game, genuinely speaking. But anyways, let's move on. Let's talk about Gabriel Jesus, because this is a player who many people were very mixed about what he was going to bring to Arsenal. A lot of people said that he's not really a goal-scoring number 9. He's known for more of his hold-up. He's known for more of his technical side of the game. So is that something that Arsenal really need? And if Arsenal are going to rely on a striker like that, then they're going to need their inside forwards to provide the goals, right? If your striker is providing hold-up and is taking care of the technical stuff of the game, the technical side of the game, if I can speak English, and is known for more bringing other people into play, then you need your inside forwards to carry with the goals, kind of like Salah and Mane did all those years when they had Firmino playing in between them, when they had Firmino dropping deep and doing a lot of the donkey work. And a lot of people thought that Gabriel Jesus was going to be that for Arsenal, but so far, he's been pretty impressive. He's scored 4 goals in the current season, and I believe he's got 3 assists as well. So 7 goal contributions, and on top of that, his hold-up has been magnificent. The way he's dictated the play has been genuinely superb. I thought he was one of Arsenal's best players at Old Trafford. And I remember a lot of people saying he didn't really do anything. He didn't really create any big chances and he didn't really take that many shots. But again, you're not looking at Gabriel Jesus' profile of player, because if you watch them at Manchester City and you recognized why he was such a sought-after talent by Arsenal and even some other clubs, by the way, it's because of his technical side. It's because of how good he is in terms of his close ball control. It's because of how good he is in terms of bringing other people into play. His intelligent movement, both on and off the ball, is something that you really can't teach. And I think we've seen that with Gabriel Jesus. And one other thing that I think a lot of people said he would bring to the Emirates is something that he has brought to the Emirates so far. I know it's only 7 games, so we'll see how the season progresses. But so far, you can see the leadership. There's different ways to bring leadership to the table. Leadership isn't just about communication and barking orders and looking like a tough, passionate leader, right? It isn't all about all that rah-rah stuff. Sometimes it's about setting the example. Sometimes it's about setting the standard. Sometimes it's about leading by example, by putting in good performances. And I think Gabriel Jesus has done exactly that. And Arsenal needed that. They genuinely did. So let's move on. Let's talk about Odegaard, because another player who a lot of people think has had a great season. Now, I'm not so sure about Odegaard, but I've put him in this video because I was looking at some of his stats earlier and the numbers don't lie. And I have been watching Arsenal. Now, do I think Odegaard is a great player? Yeah, debatable. I think he's good at best, right? I think he's good at best. And the reason why I say that is because for me, I think the biggest area where he struggles is in terms of chances created. Now, I know some Arsenal fans are going to click off the video because there's popular stats floating around social media saying that Odegaard has created one of the most chances in the Premier League over the last X amount of days. And whilst that may be true, you need to differentiate between low quality chances and high quality chances. There is a very big difference. There's a very big difference. And in terms of big chances created, in other words, quality chances created, chances that you would say, I can't believe we didn't score there, somebody needs to get subbed off. Those types of chances, he's not creating many. I don't know why I pointed to my left there. He's not creating many, right? He isn't creating that many. I've got the stats in front of me here. He's averaging 1 big chance created per game. Xhaka is averaging more. Big chances per game than Martin Odegaard. Now, that's not to say that he isn't being useful. He is definitely been useful for Arsenal Football Club. He scored 3 goals. I'm not sure how many assists he had so far this season, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's around 2 or 3. But I'm not sure, to be honest, because I can't recall Odegaard being that involved in Arsenal's goals. I can recall Martinelli, Gabriel Jesus, I can recall Saka as well, being involved in goals. But for some reason, when I watch Arsenal, I don't really notice Odegaard that much. And this is coming from a neutral, so I ain't got no agenda against Odegaard. I'm not, some Arsenal fan who's just got player FC bias, right? Like, this is a neutral fan who's complimented Arsenal all season long, and I'm genuinely being honest. No salts, no nonsense. I don't really see it with Martin Odegaard. But I've put him in this video because he still has been influential in other ways. He might not be creating that many chances, but he's working hard and he is vital to that team in some way, shape or form. Anyways, let's move on. Let's talk about this guy, William Saliba, because this is a player that I didn't really know much about. And there was so much hype about Saliba. There were so many Arsenal fans who were loyal to Saliba, saying that Saliba shouldn't have been sent out on loan. Saliba should be playing for Arsenal. Saliba should be starting games for Arsenal. I remember when he went on loan to Marseille, a lot of people, especially the Arteta outers, were fuming because they could not believe that a player of his quality had moved on. Now I was sitting there as a rival fan thinking, this guy ain't good enough for the Premier League. What are you stressing about? This guy over here? This guy over here, he ain't good enough for the Premier League. What are you guys stressing about? Where's the evidence of this greatness? And then he comes back this season and he puts in excellent performances across the board. I think he had one game where you could say, yeah, okay, that wasn't particularly great. But for the most part, I think he's been good. Against Crystal Palace, good. Fulham, good. Against us, I'm not really sure because I wasn't paying too much attention to Arsenal's defense, if I'm being honest, as a United fan. But generally, he's been good, right? Like, I think Saliba has been good. He's been one of Arsenal's best players this season. And in terms of defensive performances, obviously 3 clean sheets, 1.4 tackles per game, 3.1 clearances per game. In terms of the context of how much how that weighs up against other defenders in the Premier League, I'm not really sure because I haven't dived that deep into the statistics. But just on the eye test, he looks very good this season. And so for me, Saliba has been very important. Let's move on. Let's talk about Mikel Arteta. Let's talk about the gaffer. Let's talk about the boss because, again, this is somebody who I had written off. And this is somebody who I thought Arsenal had made a huge mistake sticking by. And for the most part, that opinion can still stand. That opinion is still plausible. 7 games shouldn't change your mind on a manager. 7 games should not change anybody's mind. Whether you're an Arsenal fan or a rival fan looking at Arsenal at the moment, you shouldn't suddenly do a 180 on Mikel Arteta and say, you know what, he's a terrible, he's like going from he's a terrible manager to suddenly he's a great manager. That shouldn't happen. You should look at Mikel Arteta and say, you know what, fair play. 7 games, good start to the season. Let's see what happens. For me, I genuinely thought that he was a terrible manager, and I've sort of gone, you know what, maybe he's a good manager. Maybe he's a good manager. Is he the right fit for Arsenal yet? I don't know. Time will tell. If he does well this season, and if at the end of the season we're sat here saying Arsenal have won an FA Cup, they finished in the top four, you can't argue with that. But for the time being, he still has to prove himself. He still doesn't have the respect of a Thomas Tuchel, the respect of a Jurgen Klopp, the respect of even someone like an Erik ten Hag, because Erik ten Hag, unlike Mikel Arteta, has actually coached elsewhere. This is Mikel Arteta's first job as a manager, and I think that's the part that Arteta inners and sort of the hardcore Arsenal fans don't understand. They feel very sensitive when you criticize Mikel Arteta, and they ask the question, why doesn't he get the respect of other managers? Reason being is because his CV doesn't add up. He's still new to this, and he still has to prove himself. If Arsenal finish in the top four and win a trophy, there is no denying that Mikel Arteta is a good manager. But until that point, I'm just going to say, you know what? He's been good so far. He's been good for the last 7 games. He's been good so far. I've enjoyed watching Arsenal. I think they've looked very resolute. They've looked very together. They look like a unit. There's a feel-good factor. There's a feel-good factor at the Emirates that I have not seen in a very long time. And that's credit to Mikel Arteta. But can he keep it up is the question that's on everybody's mind. And I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. I don't think you can say yes or no either way. I think we have to just wait and see what happens, because when Arsenal come back from the international break, their fixtures are going to get a lot harder. And the fixture list is going to be a lot more condensed. So less time to rotate players, less time for things to work in your favour. That will be the real test, because as much as I've praised Arsenal, they still have failed the one big test they've had, and that was Manchester United. Yes, they played well. Yes, they were marginally the better team, but that doesn't matter if you don't put the ball in the back of the net more times than the opposition. Anyways, it's been your boy TripleM. Oh yeah, as for Arsenal being title contenders, let me just address that point before I end the video off. I think they are. I think they are. Are they going to win the league? No. But I think they're going to be the team that is second or third this season. And for me, if you finish second or third and you're within 10 points or 15 points of Manchester City, depending on when the drop-off came, right? Because if you're 15 points behind Manchester City in May, but then you rewind and go in December, you were still top of the league, or December, you were still second and you were still 5 points behind Manchester City, that context changes things, right? You can say up until this point, they were in a title race, or for most of the season, they were in a title race. So if come the end of the season, we look back at Arsenal's campaign and say for most of it, they were first, second, or third, and they were close to Manchester City, even though they dropped off towards the end, then I will say, yeah, they were title contenders, and I believe right now they will be title contenders. That's the way I'm defining it before people think I'm overreacting with the Arsenal hype. But yeah, I've got nothing else to say. It's been your boy TripleM. Leave a like on the video. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. As usual, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and peace.